So yes, let's kick things off. Welcome everybody. This is the latest Impress Knowledge Share. We have scoured the globe for the indie devs that have survived for a decade or more, and there are three of them. It would seem. No, I kid. There are a few more, but of course we got the three best. This is the Impress Knowledge Share. For those that don't know, Impress is the game marketing toolkit for indie devs. Very brief origin story. Ash, who is in the chat here, the creator of Impress, is a long-suffering indie dev himself. Created a few tools to help himself get some sort of tackle this marketing thing, and in the process thought actually these might be useful for other people, and hence Impress was born by indies for indies. But we're not here to shove that down your throat. We're here to get some great insight. So I'm going to start off with asking you each to introduce yourselves or share a brief origin story that's brought you to this point. Yeah, Sam, as I can see, your dog grabbed my attention. I'm going to start with you. Tell us who you are and how you got here, Sam.
Well, as my dog's charging around, if I mute myself, it's because he's barking. But yeah, I'm Sam ReadGraves. I've been making games since 2008. We started with like C# and XNA libraries on Xbox when sort of indie was starting to become a thing because of digital distribution. The biggest thing I've ever worked on was Gang Beasts, but that was as a producer. It's the only game actually I've not been sort of dev start to finish that I sort of came in, helped them with a bit of money, and then they got so big it made sense for me to move away because of Double Fine are better at that than I am. And yeah, the last thing I put out was with Yogscast, which is a game called Trolley Problem Inc., which is like a comedic satire narrative thing. And currently we're working on two projects which are both unannounced. One with Wired Productions and one with Blumhouse.
Very cool.
That's
so
me.
Good hit rate in the publishing department there, which is very well done and well deserved. Shawn, would like to tell folks how what brought you here.
Yeah, I've Shawn Alexander Allen. I run a studio called Nuchallenger. I don't know, as a kid, I wanted to make art, writing a whole lot of stuff. I was kind of told no on a lot of things. For some reason, video games was the thing I stuck to. I was an IGN moderator 25 years ago. So that's like unpaid labor in the sphere, but I've been like, tracking, I don't know, game sales since I was a teenager, since like IGN message boards existed. Probably even like Nintendo Power, like they used to have sales charts and whatever. So like, I don't know, the industry was like a very thing that I wanted to be in, even though I just didn't know how to do it. I think seeing the rise of indies in like the 2000s I was working retail and being a moderator selling video games to also I was like weirdly someone got my number and I was advising on stock calls. Like it's funny because I kept saying, yo, you should invest in Rockstar, which was down the street from my EB Games / GameStop. And then I went to Rockstar, like out of college, to be a trailer gameplay capture person, which is where I learned how to edit. I did some VO, some writing. I did a lot of random things, advised on some gameplay stuff. And then, meeting my one random party, I met my heroes. I met Suda51, like that was cool. And I met like Nathan Vella of then Capybara Games, not Cappy, and like Jake Casdell and Barut Pfeiffer, who were working on Skulls of the Shogun, which had no name yet. So this was a long time ago. And that was like, oh, these are real human beings. I can kind of do this. And so I left Rockstar in 2012. And yeah, Nuchallenger LLC was founded June or July 2012, basically, as soon as I left, because I had a little PlayStation Mobile thing for this game, Treachery in Beatdown City, that took like a decade to come out. And I'm currently working on, we announced Beatdown City Survivors, which is a kind of immersive sim, kind of very fun play on the survivor genre, as well as some other unannounced stuff.
Very cool, nice. And Jake, what's your origin story? If you can do the quick version, because I know you've been around the block.
Oh yeah, don't worry, I've made some notes. So yeah, I mean, I started coding in the 80s on 8-bit computers, and then went through the 16-bit computers. I spent my 20s making business software, which I learned a lot about how to run a business and do sales and marketing and kind of interact with customers and deliver stuff that people want on time that was working and supposedly bug-free, right? So that was interesting. I went indie in 2005, full-time indie, and so this is my 20th year, and I've shipped 16 games that I've worked on myself fully, and other games that I've worked on with other people. Quite a lot of casual games in the early years, before Facebook and mobile and stuff. And then I've tried a few games on Steam that are a bit more Steam-like. And most recently, we're working on Forbidden Solitaire, which is a horror-themed solitaire game. And that one could do quite well. It seems quite popular so far. And I did a popular GDC talk in 2016. It was called the No Hit Wonder, basically because I've survived for 20 years without making a hit game. And I'm going to talk about that today.
Very cool, very exciting. So it's really interesting. You've all had sort of different paths into this indie journey, and have all taken, I guess, different approaches to that indie journey. And obviously, we're all aware of like the indie dream, and it's you get all that creative freedom, and you get to make what you want, and you get to release a game and make loads of money. But we all perhaps realise the reality doesn't always go like that. And just to, I guess, temper expectations and get real, because the industry is perhaps not in the finest position at the moment. And just to maybe foster a bit of relatability, if you wouldn't mind, just perhaps reflecting and on those many years that you've been working, and to share some realities. Can you share like a significant low point that you're comfortable with, and sharing a bit about what you learned from that? And Sean, we'll start with you if that's cool.
Yeah, I think a lot about the end of 2014. Um, we'd done a Kickstarter that year. We did two. The first one was unsuccessful. It ended like the 2 days before GDC that year. I was kind of going a little manic that year because we were rapidly running out of money, and or maybe had nothing. I don't know. And the end of 2014. Basically, we did another Kickstarter like 2.5 weeks after the one failed, and we were successful at that one, but didn't budget certain things. Me and my former partner on Treachery Beatdown City, he was I don't know, we were young, we were having hard times, so that year ended with me like basically being like, what's the future? Because I was also like, because I had thrown myself at the stuff, I was I got separated from my now ex-wife, and I was like, and that means I was gonna have to live somewhere, which meant I had to figure out some income and a whole bunch of stuff. And that was very interesting, but it's weird. I just kind of was like, and I'd also, I think, overpromised on Treachery Beatdown City, and I was like, all right, we're gonna wrap this and make it smaller. And I was like, one way or another, we're gonna figure out. There was a lot of coming up into the next year. There was I freelanced on some like Kit Fox trailer for them and some other company. I had to pull a bunch of strings to basically just get through the next year. And yeah, that was the beginning of 2015 was a interesting thing, and that was a funky year for me. But yeah, it was and it basically, I didn't really recover in the game. That was kind of an off year because it was a lot of stuff of chasing publishers and chasing PlayStation Mobile's SDK, which was really hard to use. And I feel like that was a failure of a year completely, 2015. And then 2016 was when I redoubled my efforts.
Is there anything that you would sort of look back on that, and is there any sort of positives that you take away or lessons that you learned in that journey?
Yeah, I think because I don't know, we said we were going to make these 3 sprawling things in Treasury Beatdown City, and I was like, well, we had we said that, but we also were like, yo, there's going to be this amount of enemies, this blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I think we can get that done in 5 levels. So I scaled down, and I think that was very successful. I learned a lot of, chasing expectations, like, basic. I mean, I think a lot of people were just like, just get something done. And I feel like I would have done that. I think if you're going to do crowdfunding, you really need to plan for trips and stuff in that. Like, there's this I don't know, there's like the illusion that people, you see some people at every event, and you're just like, how do you do this? I did actually ask around a little bit getting through that year, because I was like, I think 2014, 2015, I was like, how do some of these teams do that? And they were like, oh yeah, this person's dad owns a company and gave them hundreds of thousands of dollars to just work. And I'm like, cool, I don't even have dad. And it made me kind of, understand that, like, comparing myself to people and trying to chase that, like, let's go to PAX and let's go to this and let's go to that, was potentially like not a good idea. Like, you really have to start figuring out like the beats and picking and choosing where you need to be, and if you do crowdfunding, you got to make sure to bake in some of those things and say like, okay, well, GDC with one other person in a hotel room can run $2,000 pretty easily. So it's like, because just San Fran is expensive, so it's like, all right, well, let's figure that out, or maybe don't have to go to all these events.
I think some real good takeaways from that, in sort of being pragmatic, learning how to de-scope or manage scope and expectations, and like real important lesson about comparison. Like you shouldn't be comparing yourself to others when you don't know their backstory or what their context is. I think it's really important. You should benchmark against yourself yesterday, is kind of how I think it's. There's only one you, and that's who you want to be focused on. Sam, yourself, anything you're happy to share?
One quick thing.
Sorry.
One quick thing I was just going to say, like, I have actually, the thing I've learned is you can just ask people straight up, like how are you at all these events? Like, because the thing is, people will share their like funding paths. They will. So that was actually really helpful, just asking a few people, and just I just assumed something, and then it was like, oh yeah, these people are actually like way more well off. Like, I came from poverty like at the time, so I'm like, all right, and everyone's actually very helpful if you take the time to ask. But if you don't ever take the time to ask, you're going to be living in your own head about everything.
Yeah.
So ask questions.
Definitely. Nice. Sam, over to you.
So my lowest point of my life was in like it was 20. No, actually, I'm just thinking about the date. It would have been 2018. So in 2017, Gang Beast was released, which, like I say, I was just the producer on. I mean, I funded them early on. But same year, also had a game release called Mainlining, which was like a passion project of mine, which I'm really proud of still. It's a cool little game, but it didn't in any way set the world on fire. It was a sort of point and click hacking game. But anyway, so when I started off, my first publisher was Mastertronic, and in their offices at the time were basically half of Devolver, like when they were starting Devolver. So Devolver wasn't really a thing yet. There was an arm of Mastertronic called Get Games, and a few of the founders, or at least entry-level people in Devolver, were there. And at the time, seeing Mastertronic, who I was tied to, just going off the edge of a cliff, and Devolver just going sky high. And literally, actually, in the meeting we had where we signed our game to Mastertronic, it was actually Graham Struthers from Devolver who really signed our game to Mastertronic. I was just always around them at events. So in my head, it was just like, they're where I need to be. Like I know the Devolver guys well. We've gone to all these shows together. I need to be in that catalog. So after Mainlining came out, I started prototyping a Western game. It was, at the time, roguelikes were really big, and Devolver still sort of had a house style. I don't think they do now. I think everyone sort of pretends they do, but if you look at their library, they don't. But at the time, it was very much, oh, it's going to be a pixelated platformer, but there's going to be blood everywhere, and it's cool because it's a Western, and it's a train heist, and you can pull the pins out of the carriages, and they all separate, and all of this is lovely. But what I didn't realize at the time was I wasn't making like a Sam Reed game. I was making like an imitation sort of shitty Devolver game. Sorry if I'm not allowed to swear. I won't swear anymore.
No, it's all good. It's all good. We're all adults.
Okay, but yeah, so I was making like this crap version of Devolver game, and also Devolver didn't even want that because again they wanted to broaden this library out and make this cool thing. So when they politely turned it down, I was like, oh well, now I need to shop around this game, and everyone kept saying, no, we don't want that because it just looks like a crap Devolver game. Like why did Team 17 want to have a bad version of Arrival, or why did Tiny Build or whoever it was at the time? And I couldn't get it signed. And after about a year's worth of work, probably about, I don't know, 40K in, because we had a team there was 3 of us, and we had some like branding. Because at the time I was thinking, oh, well, if I pay someone to do some branding, it was Corey Schultz, who does he was doing a lot of Devolver stuff at the time. Now does a lot of, like, he just did the Bungie stuff for Marathon. And I was just thinking, oh, if I can do all of this, if I can do all the stuff I think I need to do, then I'm going to get a publisher to sign it. But that all failed, and I think it was 100% down to not making a game I wanted to make. I was trying to make a game for someone else, and then when they didn't want it, I just scrambled. So the night I decided that was that, I literally got a job delivering a Chinese takeaway, and then I quite quickly, it was lucky it was quite quick, I became a games lecturer at a college and then at a university, and I wrote some courses. And over that sort of short period of time was when I made Trolley Problem, and then we got it signed with Yogscast, and then sort of stepped back into indie full time. But it was 100% that, and as I've said, it was 100% the lesson was I need to make games that I am passionate about and that I want to make and that stand out because they're my style, and not try and like imitate or appease publishers. And actually, I'd also say the same for fans. Like, I in no way try to appease my fans, which I'm sure is not, I don't know, commonly said, but I just make stuff that I want to make now.
Nice. That's really good. And I think there's echoes of what Shawn was saying as well, which is that indie journey, sometimes you've got to do what you got to do, and it isn't all just getting to make the game that I want to make all the time. So, like, you had to look at the lecturing option, or you had to deliver Chinese food, and I think in terms of setting expectations, you've got to be aware that those times do come, and there's no shame. It's part of your story now. So yeah, Jake, really keen to hear what you've got to say on this.
Well, one small thing, when I was a kid, Mastertronic used to sell tape cassettes for Spectrum and Commodore 64, and I've actually got a Mastertronic t-shirt and a book about collecting Mastertronic tapes. So the old one is kind of cool to me. Anyway,
Nice.
That's an aside. So, in terms of lows, you've been around 20 years. Life brings its own lows. Being an indie brings other lows. I like playing blues as well on my guitar. So, I've been there. Basically, I've had burnout probably more than once. Definitely when I worked for a corporation and quit the corporation, that burnout was combined with sort of grief and depression because my father died, and that was a tough time to try and earn money, right? That was a tough time. I think I also had burnout after I finished a game that took too long and that I put kind of everything into. That was Shadowhand, took nearly 3 years. Really hoped it was going to do well on Steam. We had publisher support and so on, and it just didn't quite take off enough. And it was really obvious from week 1 sales that this isn't going to sustain us. We can't do DLC. We just need to move on and do something else, and I had burnout from crunching on that myself, and the whole thing was just tough. So yeah, I've had burnout. Anyway, that wasn't what I was going to mention, but yeah. Also, like, if you've been around long enough, you might get ill, your wife might get ill, your kids might get ill. This illnesses, it could be longer term, it could be serious. Those can seriously impact your career. But yeah, I was just going to talk about when I went indie foolishly, naively, thinking it would be easy to make money from games. I can do this. I'm a good programmer. How hard can it be? And I was naive, and I didn't make any money for a couple of years, basically, and my games weren't succeeding. they were selling, but nowhere near enough. And we were trying to make money from, my wife was doing some writing and university work, and I was lecturing and stuff, and I was doing IT consultancy and all this sort of stuff. And we just didn't have much cash, and we were getting tax credits from the UK government to pay for childcare. And I was trying to work. I used to work till 4 in the morning because my kids were running around the house. It was chaotic, and I used to just have to shift my schedule to work in the middle of the night. Anyway, it was just a tough time of no money, which I think everyone else has been through, right? I come from a working class background. There was no support there. I had to do everything myself. And so my takeaway from that, though, is don't go indie unless you've got like a plan for surviving financially longer than you think your game will take, because your game will always take longer than you think. You need to ship it and survive. And if it doesn't do well enough, you need to be able to make another game or get some other work. Basically, you need a plan for surviving when you go indie. And that's why I'd encourage people to make games when they've got a day job or some other support and get good at it before taking the full-time plunge.
Thank you, and yeah, I really appreciate you all kind of I guess sharing being that bit of vulnerability, and it's not something that we all, going to the point about comparison, we all see everybody else's highlight reels in the world of social media, which is why I wanted to kind of dig into some of these stories, just to sort of manage those expectations. And I knew asking this question, like I've been around long enough to know that people, like, it isn't all sunshine and rainbows all the time. So understanding that there are some challenging times ahead on any sort of career or entrepreneurship journey, it is a part of the process. So with that in mind, and I'll just throw this open to anybody, and you don't feel obligated to ask if you've got any sort of thoughts on how you get through those challenging times. What do you say to yourself, or if you're expecting that to come again, like how do you get through? And if anybody wants to chime in, feel free.
I might butt in first if that's all right, just because I'm on a roll. Basically, I'm not. Number one, I'm not actually doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I love games. I love making games, and I love being my own boss. Now, obviously, money's useful, and I do want money to keep going and doing this whole thing. But if you're doing it because you kind of really want to do it, it's like your calling or something. I'm not like a priest, but I'm like a game dev, and it's like that pushes me forward. So that's motivating in self intrinsically. Okay. And two, like I've studied Aikido, Japanese martial art, and I teach it. I've done that for like 28 years. And through that, I've learned sort of perseverance, endurance, stuff like that, which you can learn from other sport or exercise or perhaps some other thing in your life that you can then kind of translate back to running a business. And maybe like I'm stubborn. I just feel like this is what I want to do. I don't really want to change it. But I am flexible, and I'll always look for the best way to run my business and change things around within what I want to do. So like if people say, hey, you should do mobile ports or whatever, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. It's not interesting to me. I want to make a new game because there are things that can make money and there are things that I want to do. So anyway, that was my little bit.
Nice, thank you.
I 100% agree in every single way. You can just rewind that if you want and pretend that I said it, because I really, really do agree. It's just the only thing I want to do. So I guess when the down bits come, as long as they're, I guess, work related or game related or industry related, it's just I don't want to do anything else. I can't see myself doing anything else. So the like one question is what else would I be doing? And I feel like when I ask that to myself, it's just like, well, there's nothing else. Like, this is what I want to do. And then it almost just like lifts you up. It's like, oh, right, yeah, I am actually doing exactly what I want to do. Like, today might be a bit crap, but I am doing exactly what I want to do. And then the other thing, which is a tiny bit of a different skew, is to almost say like, this is my fault, because it's like I want to be here. I'm doing this. I've willed this into existence. Like, whatever the game is I'm making, because I'm the one who's chosen to make it. And whether it's like auteurity or what, it's just, I've decided this is what I'm going to do. I've got myself here. Now let's just sort of tie your boots up and get out of it. Whatever the problem is, as long as it's dev related and industry related.
Cool. Yeah, I think that the indie journey starts with, for I would say 99% of indie devs is, I want to make the games I want to make, and yeah, it's not a direct up and to the right path, but at any one point, yeah, you're going to be worried about release or worried about funding or whatever. But at that moment, on that day, you are making the games that you want to be making. So that's kind of what you got into it for, which is great.
Sometimes, sorry, Sean, I'm sure you've got loads to add, but sometimes I look back when I was 18, I left home, was living in a bedsit. I didn't have enough money to eat food, right? And, just couldn't really do anything. And so ever since then, as long as I can kind of afford food and press pieces of plastic on my keyboard and eventually earn money through the internet, everything is cooler since then. So if you've had some kind of hardship, you can use that as a fire to kind of, make you feel good about your current life. It's not always possible. Brain chemistry can get in the way, but that's the thing. Anyway, sorry, that's enough from me.
Sean, did you want to add anything?
I guess just trying to remember the folks that you could lean on to talk to. I think a lot about how I don't know, it's I don't think I have great coping mechanisms when things are going. It takes a lot of having to figure out there's a lot of survivorship bias. But like I think the end of last year was it was a very hard year, and like I've been reminded by folks that like who can I can talk to, and been able to just getting on calls with folks has been very helpful. Even especially folks who will listen, because part of the problem is like some folks try to solve your problems for you, or just keep reiterating things you already know, and that's not super helpful. But like finding the folks who are doing the thing you're doing, because like I can't talk about most of this stuff to my wife, right? Like it's not her thing to like, she knows the industry sucks, and but like being able to find your homies to talk about stuff with, and just I don't know, try to plot a path forward with them is super helpful.
Yes,
Yeah, I
a
think
super
that's
good
really
point.
important. Yes, and to your point as well, but like if somebody comes to you, you don't like, as Sean said, you don't always have to solve it for them. Sometimes you just need somebody to sit in the mud with you and just go, yeah, this sucks. I hear you. And yeah, but the whole point of this session is to highlight to everyone, we all go through it. So there are people that understand, and you can go to. But I don't want
Yeah,
this to just be.
could I just bring
Sorry,
up
yeah,
one
yeah,
thing? This
yeah,
guy,
please.
Dr. B, he's part of Take This. And he did a workshop at DICE last year or the year before about crisis management. And it was great because it was about how like he started off the thing saying, hey, if someone's on the highway and their car is broken down and they call you, what is the first thing you do? And the first thing you do is not try to troubleshoot their car for them, right? Like it's like if they're calling you, they trust you enough to call you in the middle of a big meltdown, like they're scared, they're in the middle of a highway. And yeah, honestly, I think we talk a lot about we're indies and whatever, but like thinking about management stuff, like no one takes courses on this stuff, and that was one of the best things, because it helped me kind of just understand how best to help people in real life, actually, just because I feel like certain people with also certain brain types, like I think ADHD is very much like you want to fix everything, and and you actually have to like stop and be like, okay, or you want to relate your own experience to people, and yeah, you really have to find the people who will stop and listen, and also figure that out for yourself, because just because you're going through it, you need to actually really stop and talk to people. But honestly, I also think looking for some sort of training and stuff like that's also helpful, because it will help you understand better how to deal with these things.
100%. Yeah, great advice. So I really, really appreciate you all sharing that. But I don't just want to bring everybody down. So let's bring it back up. And you can share a highlight from your journey, kind of what's something that's made you really, really proud and pleased with what you did. And Shawn, as we finish with you, let's start with you now.
It's I don't know. It's like one of the interesting things is I don't know. I think there's a talk with like Kendrick Lamar where he was talking about how when he released an album, it was the worst day of his life. And you know, an album that gets like millions of plays and this and that, because when you release things, they often still come with a negative feeling, because it's your creative work that you're putting out in the world. So they all kind of come with um so like you can easily say like having like putting your game out, but I don't necessarily know if that like is like positive. I think having I think one of the best times was like I'd been working on Treachery and Beatdown City for a while, and you know, we took some time off of the circuit and we like really figured out some of the aesthetic stuff with it, and we added this whole zoom feature. And it was really cool when we brought it back to PAX that there was this like palpable excitement that I had not seen before, and you know, felt like kind of like very ugly duckling for a while, like because people were, I don't know, they were like, it's just a beat 'em up. And I'm like, no, it's something with like writing and this and that and blah, blah. But it was like all of a sudden people, it kind of started clicking with people. And I don't know, anytime I see someone like with a game clicks with, that brings me back up quite a bit. I like to, I tell people like, hey, bringing your game out to the world and seeing people like IRL, like having a good time with it is probably one of the best like sense like endorphin that gets you like really excited and can just help you keep going a bit.
Nice. Jake, how about yourself?
Well, a couple of things. One, I was after I'd made 4 games, I got contacted by Big Fish Games, and this is, by the way, I had no money at this time, and they said, "Do you want to do some contract work and make a game called Fairway Solitaire for us, and work with a good designer there?" And I accepted, and the money was extremely useful, but I learned a ton from working for the game. But it was really nice to be asked. But somebody'd recognized something in my previous games, the way I'd done them on the polish level, and offered me that work without me looking for it. So that was pretty cool. And later on, they offered me a job in Vancouver at their studio, and we moved the whole family there. We were open to this idea. And honestly, moving continent for 4 years was a super cool thing to do, even if, you know, I didn't stay at the corporation and I ended up being indie again. So that was a highlight. One other one was when we released Regency Solitaire 1 on Steam. We didn't expect it to do much. In fact, we released it the same day as The Witcher 3, which is a bit like when people just released games the same day as the Oblivion Shadow drop the other day. But we weren't expecting it to do much. Then a week or something after, you know, it came out, Giant Bomb did a video about it, and they were like kind of making fun about it, but also like, this is like really awesome. And then a bunch of press wrote about it, and it kind of in a very niche way went sort of viral in a niche way. And I think that helped put us on the map with mainstream sort of audiences more than before, because we were quite casual based. But it was just really nice to see people for the first time, I guess, talk about one of our games. And this was after I'd been made games for 8 years. No one cared up to that point. And that was pretty interesting. So anyway, there was a couple of points.
Nice. Very cool. And Sam, what's your highlight that comes to mind?
Well, I would say what Shawn said about seeing people play your game. Obviously, for every time you have a release or something that comes around, but I really, really love seeing people in the wild play the game, whether it's in person or on like Twitch. I really love that. Same as Jake, actual Giant Bomb. The reason I got in, I started working with Gang Beasts initially was because we were at an event and I got them to show the game. And that night we got a moderator from Giant Bomb to feature the game, and they played it that night and it went viral. And then at that point it was just like, okay, well, we're doing this together. And so Giant Bomb was always like a really cool part of the story. But I feel like for me, it was probably realizing like what I needed to like live in a way that it's like, okay, well, actually, I don't need this stuff and I don't need that stuff, and I can be on like a fairly low wage, but then in theory, I can do this for the rest of my life as long as I'm, you know, just getting that enough for my mortgage and me and my wife put the same amount of money in a pot for like, just to run the house, we're both completely cool with each other. As long as you hit that minimum line, just do what you want. And sort of realizing that and just taking all the weight off of like, oh, we have to hit these numbers and KPIs, whatever. It's like, no, I can make games, get this amount of money. And then at that point, everything just started looking at sustainability of like, how can we just make something sustainable? Because doing this as a day job, if you haven't got that fear and pressure, it's just a dream. That's the dream. So as long as we can do that. So yeah, I think when I realized that I had it so good, but my car's got mold in it, but I don't care, so it's fine. But yeah, so I think probably just realizing that actually I have a really good life. It's just not got a lot of money in it.
Yeah, I think that's and echoes a point Jake made earlier, like kind of knowing what your life can scale to, and the counter to that is the condition that it must always be more and more and more. But you can never achieve, like, more never ends. It's like tomorrow never comes. You never get more. Whereas if you can, reflect on, okay, I'm actually in a good place now and I'm doing what I want to be doing, that can be a very liberating feeling. That's great. And to the point that Shawn made as well, kind of, it's not always about the release and the sales and the money. It's like these small moments can be where the magic is. And again, it's like, I wanted to make games is why I'm on this journey, and seeing that as a part of the journey. It's not about the final end destination. It is about really reflecting in the time. I bang on a lot about this thing called the arrival fallacy, which is where, a lot of Olympians, when they get their gold medal, they then go into a state of depression, which is exactly what Shawn was saying. It's like not about the end destination, because you've now finished that thing that was driving you on, and you can sometimes get a bit lost, and I've certainly experienced that. So building on this, then, I'd really love to understand what each of your current definition of success is, and how has that changed over your journey. And Jake, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, mine is maybe going to change. Previously, it was basically to be able to keep doing this, right? So my measure of success is, can the next game and all my previous games and my business decisions mean that I can just keep going as an indie and have the life, like Sam said, where I'm paying the bills, things are good, relatively, and just keep living this lifestyle. So that's, a measure of success. I think, though, I've been doing that for a long time, and I'm also like, maybe I'd like a bit more money to go in a pension or something really boring, right? So I'm having recently released a trailer for Forbidden Solitaire, and that's done quite nicely as a trailer. I still got to make the game and make the game good, and the game has to live up to expectations and all this stuff. I would say that I would redefine success for me now as a game which pays for maybe 2 or 3 games, like a couple of years worth of something. In fact, gets me to the point where I can make a totally non-commercially viable game. So probably a platform game. So, like, I want to make some kind of fun game just for me for a while that has no pressure. And it's kind of actually why I got into making games as a hobby in the first place. So that would be my next level of success.
Nice.
But if that doesn't happen and it just enables me to keep making games for a bit longer, then I'm still good with that.
Very cool. I like that layering of success there. That's a really nice frame of mind. And Shawn, how about yourself? What's your current definition, and how has that perhaps evolved?
Yeah, it was. I think 2020 was nice because I don't know. I looked at um Treachery and Beatdown City when it came out. It had like a lot of highs and lows, but by the end of the year, it was profitable after like a decade of working on it, which is uh cool. And I got to like put money towards like important things that year. That was like my kid turned 1 that year. But yeah, similarly, like I don't know, like I haven't had like vacation since like 2020, since like the pandemic hit, and part of it is I can't like stop working. And I look at success as if like I can work with a few folks and they are, they all have healthcare, and we can like like I could get sick for a month or just take a month off or whatever, and things are okay, that would make me like super excited.
Nice.
So
Very
yeah,
cool.
similarly, like being able to either make a game that sells or sign like a business deal with someone who isn't looking for like every last penny to go towards, every last second of your life, rather than, and that they say, cool, we're going to bake some time in for you as a person.
Nice. Amazing. These are all very wholesome definitions. So that's why we need more more indie games and less corporate enterprises. Uh, Sorry, Sam, do you want to throw in here?
Yeah, yeah. I would say because I take my dog out, I can't say the W word because he's near me and he'll hear me. But because I take my dog out twice a day, I usually start at about 5:30 in the morning and finish at 6 at night. But I actually do like a normal amount of work. It's just spread out because I go on these long WALKs. So for me, like I would actually just, I mean, it might sound big headed, it might not, because everyone has different meanings of the word success. But I think that I'm really successful in the way I define it because I get up at, like, say, about 5:30. I'm a morning person, so that's great. I then do some work, go for a long W, do work, go for a long W, and so on. And then I always finish at 6, where me and my wife hang out, which then, watch TV, play games, do whatever, we want to do. And then just that Monday to Friday. Sometimes I work on Saturday and Sunday, but when I say work, I mean because she lays in, I just mess around in Unreal for a few hours. But for me, that is perfect. Like, that's great. So then it is just that thing of, being sustainable, keeping money coming in. And that's actually why we've taken on 2 games at the minute, is because the 2 teams, and when I say teams, as a company, we're 7 people, but the 2 teams can jump in and out on both projects. So we're sort of, everyone's being used at certain times, but also it means that we have runway until like 28. So like about 3 years. So it's just, we're, just happy just going through stuff. So
And
Very
going back to
cool.
what Sean said and about runway, yeah, I mean, I'm in a situation this year where, because the other team we're working with is doing the art, the audio, and the story, and I'm doing the code and design, we don't need to spend any money on this game. So actually, the runway we might have needed to use for assets is just runway. And I could, in theory, stop working for a month and it would be okay, or whatever, a few months. But or go on a holiday, but I don't actually want to, because I'm so hyped, and this is a big chance of success. I actually just want to finish this thing and then see what happens, right? But it is nice to be able to say, wow, actually, there's some runway ahead of me, and I can, if I couldn't work for whatever reason, it wouldn't be a disaster, and that's a pretty good situation to be in. Not a lot of people manage that even with their day jobs, right? So
100%, and you, reflecting and acknowledging that, because it would be easy for you to just go, "Oh, I've got to get the game out." Like, you can blast through these moments that are, the next time somebody asks, this can be one of the highlights that you talk about, and it is important to be mindful of the little wins that we get along the way. So yes, it's great to acknowledge that. I just realised we're absolutely flying through the time, and so I'm going to give you a bit of free form on the next kind of couple of questions that we had lined up, and let you pick where you want to answer, because I want to just offer a bit more perhaps pragmatic advice to those on their own indie journey, either about to embark or on it. And the topics that we were going to cover were things like funding is a real challenging landscape at the moment. So if anybody's got any thoughts or advice for aspiring indies on the various options or experiences you want to share, then feel free. Or another challenge is this idea of awareness building. So any comments on sort of this notoriety or community building, any observations that you've had, or just general advice that you would give to somebody who's starting out. So I'll give a free format, sort of open ended, any of those kind of topics that anybody wants to chip on. If you've got a killer point, and Sam, we'll start with you.
Okay, so for funding, like I say, I've always worked with publishers. I've never had a bad experience with publishers. I think that's a very lucky and privileged place to be, because I know people who have. But yeah, I've always loved the people I've worked with. Oddly, that means that for me, finding money, I would think that if someone's like, oh, I've worked with publishers every single time, then it would be easy. But I've worked with a different publisher every single time, and it's so it's not been through choice. Mastertronic went under. Merge got bought by whoever they got bought by. The people who destroyed the games industry. I can't think of what they're called now.
Embracer, was it?
Yeah, Embracer. Yeah. And then went under. Double Fine got bought by Microsoft, so they don't publish games anymore. Yogscast changed sort of what they're targeting, so they don't want to sign like the next project down the pipe. So again, always great experiences. Always wanted to work with people again, but it's just always been that carousel of needing to find new publishers. The reason I work with publishers is obviously money and funding is great, but I would actually say in the UK, at the minute, there's loads and loads of great grants, and you can actually find quite a lot of money in like different pools and pots. So money is not necessarily the be all and end all. The thing is that I just want to make the game. Like I can't market. I know I can't. It's just not my skill set. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to learn it. So that's why really I've always gone with publishers. So like you say, when it's about that crowd building, audience building, it's just something that I can't do and I don't want to learn. And that's really the reason that I've always worked with publishers.
I've got counterpoints to all of that.
Great.
Go for it. Yeah.
We want the balance.
So, like, I feel like a lot of indies, especially even my son has just done a game programming course, and you know, a lot of indies, especially new ones, feel the model is make a prototype, pitch to publishers, get funding, riches, right? And whereas I'd actually encourage people to try shipping games on their own first and building up their own IP and fan base. And then, you know, like what I've done is built this layer of my games that just all sit there making money. And I don't have to give away much of that. I do with a couple of different, one publisher and maybe a couple of third party sort of funders. But, you know, so I haven't done pure indie stuff. I've done some publishing, some grants and whatever. And it's great that it works for you, Sam, and it's great that it works for other people. So I'm not 100% poo-pooing the concept. We might end up with one for our current game. But, you know, I don't think enough indies try to just kind of make it work on their own, entirely independent of that. And owning 100% of the income from one of your games is pretty cool. You know, it's like, great, all that money's ours. And that can be quite nice. So that's one thing. I back up what you say about grants. There's one thing which is some people I've noted get good at applying for grants for kind of like art games. And I'm using this in quotes here. There's nothing wrong with art games. They can exist and that's fine. But what you can end up doing is training yourself to get grants, not training yourself to make a commercially viable product. And I'm not saying you need to do that if you want to make an art game, but if you want to make a commercially viable product, you can get trapped in the sort of grant loop. And the same with contract work. You can get trapped in making that and you're not actually making enough runway to then make your next game. And in terms of, we do marketing stuff. No, I don't particularly enjoy it either. I have built a presence on, you know, for customers and fan base on Steam, newsletter, social media, all that. The other thing I've tried to do is build a presence within the industry. I mean, we're doing that now, but doing talks and going to events and so on, because that networking or making friends, that is what gives you opportunities, new information. It's just super valuable. Shoulder to cry on, as Shawn talked about. Maybe he doesn't cry, but you know, you need these sort of people to talk to. So you need visibility on two fronts: customer base and within the industry. Anyway, that was my mini no publisher rant.
That's great. It's good. It's good to see the flexibility. Yeah, Shawn, let's have your thoughts.
I guess counter to the counter. I guess first off, my advice isn't to indies, it's to publishers, and it's to stop being cowards. Like, it is your job to put money into video games. Like, everybody's like, oh, we're risk averse, and I'm like, if you don't make video games, your company's dead. Like, please, like, you got to stop acting like we're not putting any risk in, right? We're making something that we really care about, and you know, if it doesn't do well, it hurts us too. We put a lot of our time, energy. The thing is as someone again who like, I don't know, I worked at Rockstar for 5 years. I never cleared any. I lived in New York with my ex, with her daughter. Didn't make much money, and you know, leaving to go do like my first 6 months of dev work was like 3 months of unemployment and 3 months of severance. And if I got lucky with PlayStation Mobile, it was also not a lot of money, but it was like if I didn't get that money, I wouldn't have had food to eat. And so like a lot of folks, and also I don't know, finding a job. Like again, I did the working. I worked at Major League Baseball for 6 years over the last 13 years, and that was, soul sucking. It made my game take a lot longer to come out. So it's like, I think I don't necessarily run to publishers, but I do think we need to figure out better ways of funding games. Like it's grants are important. Like I guess also in the States, if it's really funny because like coming from like you see all the games that are successful and they're from countries who actually invest, right? Like, and the US does not. And also I have helped run orgs that do this, right? Like I did all the sponsorship and speaker stuff for Game Devs of Color Expo. I was able to raise 500 grand one year, of which we gave out six $25,000 grants that were no strings attached to different devs. Spirit Swap, which just came out this year, they were able to hit like a close to $200,000 Kickstarter off of a 25K grant. We Never Yield. Neil was able to get a little further with 25K. These 25K grants that were not like I don't know, people like to do micro grants for like $1,000. I'm like, that's not even rent for most people. And it's like thinking of these, and I honestly think we were trying to do, 500 to 50 to $100,000 would have been, a lot, especially when you're a marginalized person who doesn't come from anything. It's like, you can languish and work on a video game for 5 to 10 years while you're doing every other job under the sun, but then the world is robbed of that game. Like you might stop, most people will. I don't really understand. Most people are like, how'd you spend 10 years to make a game? How'd it come out? And I was just like, I don't know, man. Like I came from 80s New York where you could get stabbed or shot whenever, so I'm like I have like a very thick skin, and I was like, this is the thing I'm doing. We're gonna do it no matter what. Saw life come and go, got divorced, got remarried, had a kid. It's, I don't know, but like money is super important for indies, and we need to figure out, I don't know, better ways to fund it. I don't necessarily think publishers taking lots of rights and money and all that stuff is like a good thing. I think we need more publishers coming together to fund games. If you don't want to put $1 million into a project that costs $1 million, find some friends yourself. Because like, so what if the game does really well and you don't make all the money? Like, come on, man. Like that's how movies are funded, right? Like, Get Out was funded by multiple people, and then it was very successful and multiple people got money. If you didn't want to put 250 or whatever into that movie, but we see that a lot, and here it seems this all or nothing thing, and it's like really choking the industry because everybody's too scared to really invest in things that are super interesting. But also we see that things that are super interesting are the things that win all the awards also. So it's like Balatro, Indica, all these things would not have, like, they're not typical things that you can, I don't know. It's like, it's just this whole like people need money, especially underrepresented people.
Yeah, the appetite for risk needs to change, and if you are in a position where a risk-averse offer is there, you can also use that as an opportunity to reflect and go, well, if they're saying that this is viable, do I need them? What's the value they're bringing to the table, or who else can I talk to now that this has been validated by somebody? Right, I'm aware we've blown through the past hour. That's absolutely flown by. I really appreciate all of your thoughts and insights. And if you guys want to drop your preferred links where people can follow you, feel free to drop those in the chat. Or if not, we've obviously been sharing your details beforehand. But yeah, I want to thank everybody who attended. Thank you, Ed. This was the GOAT. So some big praise from the audience, and yeah, I genuinely really do appreciate all three of you sharing these. We've been some places, and I appreciate the transparency, the vulnerability, and hopefully folks have got a better idea of that. Yeah, maybe it's not all candy floss and roses in the indie journey, but you're all still here. You're all still doing it. It is possible, and hopefully we can think that this is worth it. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening to us. If you didn't catch the beginning, this is being recorded, so we'll have a video soon, and we'll also be doing another knowledge share soon. If you are in the UK, we've got an in-person event on the 22nd of May. So look up Impact Indie Games. You can see it on the Impress website. Yeah, we will speak to you all soon.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
a lot.
Nice to see you guys.